Why? What changed?
Upon his return, Yusuf's rhetoric didn't just accommodate the party line, it hardened significantly.
Yeah, he goes from calling a burqa ban dumb and literally resigning over it to stating publicly that he would probably vote to ban the face veil in public spaces.
Citing security and integration, of course.
Of course. And it goes even further. He took the lead on advocating for heavily policing public Islamic prayers near historic sites.
It's a complete 180. The author analyzes this specific pivot from resisting a ban to championing it as the ultimate proof of compromised faith.
Because he chose the job.
Exactly. Yusuf prioritized his newly elevated political position over the religious freedoms of his own community.
And the theological implication here is huge. It centers on the concept of the ummah.
Right.
For those who might not know, in Islamic theology, the ummah is the collective community of believers.
It's a core tenet.
A core ethic is that a Muslim is expected to protect, or at the very least not actively harm, the religious practice of fellow believers.
And by championing a public ban on face coverings, the critique argues that Yusuf's political actions forced practicing Muslim women into an impossible choice.
A terrible choice.
They must either violate their deeply held religious convictions regarding modesty or face criminalization, fines, and exclusion from public life.
He is basically providing a Muslim rubber stamp to rhetoric that frames visible Islamic practice as a cultural threat.
That's exactly what he's doing.
It's an incredible shift, and this shift toward strict state-enforced cultural norms leads the analysis into completely different territory.
Yeah, we move from theology to some pretty hard political science here.
The source draws a parallel that constitutional lawyers are making. They are comparing Reform UK's proposed administrative blueprint to the Chinese Communist Party.
The CCP.
Yeah, the CCP. And when you first hear that comparison, it sounds like extreme hyperbole, right?
Oh, absolutely. A British political party and the CCP. It sounds crazy.
Right. But the political scientists cited in this critique aren't talking about the ideology of communism versus nationalism.
No, they are analyzing the structural mechanics of how the state wields power.
Right, like how do you actually build authoritarianism?
Exactly. And the core trait of the CCP model is that the party overrides the law.
The party is supreme.
Yes, in an authoritarian system, courts and judges do not exist to protect individual rights. They don't act as a check on the government. They exist solely to enforce the will of the ruling party.
And Yusuf has openly bragged about this kind of system.
He has.
He said that under a reform government, lawyers and judges will be powerless to stop mass deportations.
He is actively advocating for a system where judicial oversight is completely neutralized.
Which is terrifying.
If the executive branch decides to deport someone, and that person appeals to a judge saying their human rights are being violated, Yusuf's blueprint ensures the judge has zero legal authority to intervene.
That is a foundational tool of absolute authoritarian control, just removing the independent judiciary from the equation entirely.
It really is. But it goes way beyond just neutralizing judges. The mechanics of how he proposes treating political opposition is chilling.
Oh, the detention center policy.
Yes, there's a highly specific policy regarding the placement of migrant detention centers.
Break this down because this blew my mind.
So in CCP China, regional suppression is a very common tactic.
Okay.
If a specific province or region shows political dissent, the central government will routinely starve it of resources, or they'll target it with undesirable, heavily polluting infrastructure.
As a form of punishment.
Exactly. It's punitive. And the source draws a direct line from that tactic to Yusuf's stated policy of deliberately citing migrant detention centers in postcodes that vote Green or Labor.
So think about the town you live in right now. Now imagine the ruling party redrawing your local zoning laws and dropping a massive high-security detention facility next to your neighborhood.
Not because it makes logistical sense.
Right. Not because it's near a highway or a port, but specifically because your neighborhood voted against them in the last election.
He wants to look at an electoral map, find the opposition voters, and use the physical machinery of the state to politically punish them.
It is the weaponization of state infrastructure against democratic choice.
You are no longer just governing at that point. You are using the bureaucracy to inflict pain on dissenting citizens.
And this approach extends to cultural rights, too, through Yusuf's proposed Equal Treatment Act.
Which is a very cleverly named act.
A name like the Equal Treatment Act sounds perfectly fair on the surface. I mean, who doesn't want equal treatment?
Everyone wants it.
But the reality of the policy, much like the CCP suppressing regional identities in Tibet or Xinjiang to enforce a state-mandated Chinese culture.
It's entirely about enforcing uniformity.
Yes. The act seeks to eliminate long-standing British legal accommodations.
For decades, UK law has allowed for specific pluralistic accommodations. For example, the right for practicing Sikhs to carry a kirpan.
A ceremonial dagger.
Right, in public spaces without violating weapons laws.
It's a huge part of their religious practice.
Exactly. But by eliminating those accommodations under the guise of equal treatment, the state is replacing pluralism with a tightly controlled, state-dictated cultural baseline.
Everyone must conform to one standard, by law, with zero exceptions for religious history.
Which brings us to what the critique calls the great irony.
The great irony.
Yusuf frequently goes on networks like GD News and fiercely attacks current UK surveillance policies, things like the Online Safety Act.
He hates it.
He warns the public that these laws are plunging the UK into a China-style surveillance state where free speech is crushed.
So he uses China as the ultimate boogeyman to scare voters.
Right.
Yet at the exact same time, he is designing an administrative blueprint for his own party that weakens the courts, bypasses human rights laws, uses infrastructure to punish opponents, and threatens to abolish equality watchdogs.
He is warning the public about the very authoritarian toolkit that he is actively packing into his own briefcase.
It's projection on a massive scale.
It really is. And this authoritarian approach to state infrastructure isn't just theoretical posturing. It extends directly into how the party plans to execute its most controversial platform issue:
Immigration.
immigration and the deeply loaded concept of remigration.
We really need to unpack the specific mechanics of this terminology because there is a massive difference between the language the party uses and the actual logistical nightmare of the policies proposed.
That's a huge difference.
In broader European politics, remigration is a far-right concept. It advocates for the large-scale, often forced expulsion of non-white or non-Christian minority populations.
Specifically targeting Muslims.
Right, to achieve ethnic homogeneity.
But publicly, Nigel Farage and Zia Yusuf avoid the term remigration entirely.
They won't say it.
They prefer the phrase mass deportation. They frame their policies strictly around legality, national security, and relieving the strain on public resources like the NHS and housing.
So it sounds bureaucratic.
Exactly. They explicitly reject the idea that they want to deport anyone based purely on their religion or race.
But if you look at the logistical reality of their proposed policies, it tells a very different story.
The overlap with remigration is massive when you look at who is actually targeted.
It's not just about stopping small boats crossing the channel. It targets undocumented migrants, sure, but it also targets certain categories of legal, long-term Muslim residents.
Let's examine the specifics here. First, there's the pledge to deport roughly 600,000 undocumented migrants,
Okay.
targeting anyone who arrived via unauthorized channels or overstayed visas. Then there's the policy of removing foreign nationals from state-subsidized social housing to prioritize British citizens.
But the policy shift that is the most structurally devastating is the plan to strip indefinite leave to remain, or ILR.
This is huge.
Farage announced plans to scrap ILR statuses granted under previous governments.
And indefinite leave to remain is not a temporary tourist visa.
No.
It is permanent residency. Achieving ILR in the UK often takes a decade of continuous legal residency.
It's a brutal process.
It requires passing strict background checks, passing the Life in the UK test, proving English proficiency, and paying thousands of pounds in fees. It means you have legally settled in the country.
So, if you strip indefinite leave to remain from someone who has held it for 20 years,
You're not just deporting them.
you're redefining their entire existence over the last 2 decades as conditional invalid.
And you're doing it retroactively. By proposing to scrap these legally granted statuses, they are threatening hundreds of thousands of legal long-term foreign residents.
Including massive populations from South Asian and Middle Eastern Muslim backgrounds.
Right, with the sudden loss of their residency.
It's basically a bureaucratic loophole to initiate mass expulsion.
That's exactly what it is.
You take a legally settled population, you change the classification of their paperwork retroactively, and suddenly they're deportable.
It achieves the exact demographic goal of remigration without ever using the politically toxic word.
And while Yusuf focuses on building the authoritarian mechanics to achieve this, Farage provides the ideological rhetoric to justify it.
Farage focuses heavily on the narrative that Islam is culturally incompatible with the West.
Right.
He repeatedly states on major news networks that a growing